Okay, good evening. Today's daf is daf Nun Hey. We're up to Nun Dalid Amid Beis. We're up to Nun Dalid Amid Beis. So the Mishnah on Nun Dalid Amid Aleph was describing Elohim Aksherim. These are the animals that are kosher. That it has something that's kosher. And we said that the gageres, if it's missing, right? Rabbi Shimon said ad ki isra atalki, up to an isra atalki. So in other words, if you have a hole in the windpipe and it's more than an isra atalki, it's more than it's more than the isra atalki, then what? It is a treifa. Less than an isra atalki, it's not a treifa. What about the isra atalki itself? In other words, always so milachix is one way, flesh is another way. What's about parif? What about the isra atalki itself? So, guys, to get the Gemara clear, if you hold that, right? If you hold that the isra atalki is a treifa, so it means ad. You're going right. It means everyone's. He's in the country now, right? He's in the country now. Right. Okay. So if it's a treifa, so it means up until ad v'lo ad bechlal. In other words, ad up until v'lo ad bechlal, and it's not in the category of a non-kosher, but it's treifa. Ad v'lo ad bechlal, up until and not including. So up until an isa, it's kosher. But once you pass that point, loy bechlal, guys, here, important to get this, fellas. Again. So ad v'lo ad bechlal, up until it's kosher, v'lo ad bechlal, because when it's exactly that amount, it's a treifa. Up until and not including, right? Up until and not including, it will be a treifa. So that's what Rav Nachman's going to say, and then the Gemara is going to challenge Rav Nachman from different places in Shas. Okay, so we're up to I don't know, about 10 lines up. It says Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman, Kisela, right? Kiyesa mikisela, right? Is like a sela is like kiyesa misela. Now this is not going on. This is not going on our Mishnah and Treifis. This is going on the picture of the head that was missing. Remember the guy? We said the head is metamim b'tumasoil, but once you get to a certain point of the size of a sela, no longer, is it or yeah. I think that. I sometimes that's the pshat. That's the pshat. That's the pshat. It's linyan tuma. It's linyan tuma. Okay, good. So with the inyan tuma, and in other words, if it's a sela, it's still metama. It's still metama. It doesn't lose its same skull. It doesn't lose the same skull. Ki'isa is kiyesami kisa. Now this is our what? This is our Gemara. Ki'isa is kiyesami kisa. In other words, the Isser itself will view it as more than what? More than a valid amount that it should be kosher. In other words, it's a treifa. Ki'isa, in other words, Ki'isa will view his Isser as the larger amount. The larger amount makes it a treifa, guys. Guys, you got it? Again, it's a little confusing. Again, if you're below the 50, you're kosher. If you're above the 50, you're a treifa, right? What about the 50 itself? So we're saying the 50 is what? Is like above. So Isa itself is Kimayla Isa. It's above an Isa. Good. So Kisa is Kiyas Mekisa. Alma, Ksav Rav Nachman, Ad, up until V'lo Bechlal, up until the 50, but not including the 50, up until the Isa, but not including the Isa, because the Isa itself will be a treifa. Esa Rav Nachman. Now this is speaking of fellas about being a bed, the matama bed, and there's a rope hanging out of the bed. There's a rope hanging out of the bed. They used to make beds. They had chavolim. They had the ropes, and this rope is hanging out. Now says the Gemara, chevel hayotzim min amita ad chamisha tfachim tahar. If it's chamisha tfachim and the bed becomes tamei, chamisha tfachim and the bed becomes tamei, the rope will be tahar because it's not makabel tuma, because it's not roy for anything. Again, it's not a kli. but it's not roif anything. My love chamisha kilimata. Does it not mean that chamisha will be kilimata, meaning that what? That it's tahar? Loi chamishim kilamayla. It means what? It's like above. No, lemata means ad bechlal, up until the 50 and below the 50. No, this means up until the 50 and above the 50. So in other words, you just mentioned that you're not machriya like anything. Rav Nachman will tell you, no, if it's exactly 5, it'll be tamei. Up until 5, what? It's not tamei. Exactly 5, it's tamei. Tashma mehei va'arasara tamei. From hey until asar, it's tamei. You want to know what this is used for, guys? This is fascinating Rashi over here. Okay? If you look, you see in Rashi, it says, Perik Yutes Mishnah Beis, Mechamisha v'arasara tamei, sheboi koishenes hapsachim zeichel lepesach mitzrayim. Dichsiv isu chag ba'avoysim al-kados mizbeach. Guys, they used to go ahead and they would tie up the korban Pesach on the bed. That rope was used just like in Mitzrayim. They tied the sheep to the bed. So too in Bisman, in the bias, when they would bring the korban Pesach, they would tie it to the bed. So that's what it was used for. Fascinating. Chamisha ayud, okay, and therefore it's tamei. Since it has usage, if the bed is tamei, it becomes tamei. Notice Rashi tells us that the rope itself cannot be makabel tamei. It brings a source, but you need the bed to be makabel the bed to be tamei to transfer the tamei to what? The rope. So mechamesh says the Gemara. So hey, atzara tamei. My love asara kilamata. That asara is kilamata. La asara kilamayla. Asara is what? Is kilamayla. So again, you have no hechach. Tashma. Okay, a kli cheres, fellas, if it's makabel tumah, you have to break it. If it's makabel tumah, you have to break it. If it's a certain size and you break it and it still is capable as a receptacle, it's still tamei. So now we're dealing with different kalim with different sizes, and you break him, but it's still intact, some of the ability to receive. So it says the Gemara, Hadakin shebe klicheres, a small klicheres, hein it the kartersei, and its bottom is v'dafneseyim, and its sides yoshvin shaloyim misumachin. If it could sit without being supported, shiurin b'chdei sichas cotton. The shear is the amount to go ahead and put like a baby's finger in, a baby's finger in. In other words, if it's still capable, that after you break it, to hold enough oil to put a baby's finger in, it's still tamei. Now, what size did it start at? Says the Gemara, it started vad loig. It started at a loig. Now, so my lav loig kilamata ad loig. Rashi says shear zenitin l'shivei kalim shleichoyit chilasan ella ad loig. This shear of what of retaining the ability to go ahead and contain oil to metama a baby's finger is when it started off the size of a loig. Dimhoyit chilasan yaismi loig have shear shvara b'revias haloig hilkaman, because it was larger than a loig. Then the shear of shvira it had to be revias. In other words, depending on the size of the kli that you started with, that would ascertain how much has to be broken for it to retain its same kli. So if it was a loig, it had to be broken up to broken till the sichas of a shemen of a baby. If it's more than a loig, then revius. Says the Gemara, my lav loig kilamata. A loig, we'll view the loig as if what? It's smaller than that. And therefore ad v'ad bechlal loy kilamayla. Okay, tashma mi loig at sa, from a loig until sa, which is 24 loigim, b'revius, guys, and that's the shear. In other words, if it's a kli that was a sa, that a kli either from a loig till 24 loigim, and you break it, it has to be a kli that can hold the revius of a loig. Good. Now, my lav sa kilamata. And ad ve'ad bechlal, lo saw kilamayla ad ve'ad bechlal. Tashma misa v'at sasayim v'chatzi loig, from one saw 24 v'at sasayim to 48 v'chatzi loig. Then the shear is chatzi loig. My love sasayim kilamata, again the same kasha, sasayim kilbachida kilamata, the smaller shear like sasayim kilamayla. Now until now Rav Nachman was able to take this Mishnah. And you were just saying, how do you read the Mishnah? So you're saying you're reading it as milamata. I can read it as lamaila. When we have a mafursha brisa, which is a tana stating ad bechlal, then you got a problem. Okay, so here's your problem. Again, if Nachman says ad v'lo ad bechlal, so right, ad v'lo ad bechlal. So therefore, what you're going to say up until and not including, and therefore it's going to be a treifa when it's what it's at an anisa, and an anisa will be a treifa. Now, for Tanya, loy kilamata, a loy will treat kilamata as the smaller amount. Sa kilamata, sasaim kilamata. So all these cases, you're saying ad va'ad bechlal. In all these cases, guys, you're saying ad va'ad bechlal. And here it says openly limata, and you can't say lemaila. It's saying loy kilamata. No, it's up until and including loy kilamata. Loy we'll treat it like vichlal, the 50, right? We'll create it the same because we'll consider it kimata, which is ad bechlal. So and here you can't say lemaila because it's a brisa saying mefurish what? It's a brisa saying mefurish that it is ad bechlal. Says the Gemara, I'll tell you, really ad v'lo ad bechlal. But hasam chumra, over there it's a chumra. Damar bavo amar Yechanan, kol shiur chachamim lahachmir. All the shiurim of the chamim are to be machmir. So what happens over here, guys? If you say the loig is kilamata, right? So if it says kilamata, it's going to come out of chumra. Right? It's going to come out of chumra that you're going to have the shear, right? We'll treat it kilamata. It'll be that shear, and the other ones also kilamata. Let's see Rashi over here. Hasam kilachumra. Here's the reason we said, really it's ad v'lo ad bechlal. Here's the reason we said ad v'ad bechlal. The aslin and l'chumra. The mitamoyin l'shvarim b'shir zuta. We're going to be mitama, you don't need the larger share. It'll be mitama even the smaller share. Okay, in other words, if you go and say it's kilamata, meaning it'll be tamei even if what? Lower. It'll be tamei even lower. So we'll say ad v'ad bechlal. Okay, Masha'en came where Isa. If you're going to go below, if you're going to say it's going to be a kula, because you're going to say an Isa it's still not a treifa. If you say ad v'ad bechlal, guys, up until and including, meaning the Isa will not be a treifa, then we don't say that. So therefore, when the shiur malachumra, then we'll say ad v'ad bechlal. When it comes out, but really all over, we say ad v'lo ad bechlal. Okay, says the Gemara. All the shiur melacham is the hachmir chutz mikagrish shel ksamim. Said by in Hilchos Nida, if you find a kesem, a stain, then will be meko. They can ami diktani Allah. They chamisha kilamayla asara kilamata. So what's the diak? We said that over here you're saying that the loig kilamata. Let's see Rashi 2 lines where it gets wide. They can ami. The diktani loy kilamata sa kilamata mishum chumrahu. V'lav the name and nami makam kula ad v'ad bechlal. The diktani Allah dahi. We learned regarding the chevel. The chevel ayotze chamesha tfachim kilamayla tamei. The ad diktani ad chamesha tar v'loy ad bechlal. So we learned on this that we want to be machmir, right? So we say chamisha is kilamayla. Guys, chamisha itself doesn't work, right? Chamisha doesn't work. 5 doesn't work. What happens if 5 is above? If you treat it as above, then it does work. Then meaning it's tamei. So you see a raya when it says chamisha kilamayla asara kilamata. In both cases, I'm being metama. Again, if I have a rope that is 5 tfachim, right? We said it's not right for anything, so it's not makabel tumah. What about? We said ad chamisha. What about chamisha itself? We'll treat it as lemaila. We'll treat it as above 5. Why? To be machmir. It goes to asara. If you're going to go past the asara point lemaila, it's going to be it's not going to be tamei. So you have to go back to chamisha to treat the 10 like between 5 and 10. That will be machmir and create the tumah. So you see that you're playing both sides of the fence. Right, so l'chumra. So it's not that we hold ad v'ad bechlal. We don't. We hold ad v'lo ad bechlal. wherever we can be machmir in these dinim, we'll treat it what as whatever comes out. Whether if I have to say ad b'chal to be machmir, I will. Guys, I'm a little choppy. Good, a little. I was a little choppy. One more time. Okay. Rav Nachman said the following. Let's make a synopsis. Rav Nachman said the following. The Mishnah said that if the gageres is missing ad ki'isa atalki, it's kasha. So I know if it's less than Isra atalki, it's kasha. I know more than Isra atalki that it's tamei. What about Isra atalki itself? Says Rav Nachman, right? Is Isra atalki is ki'isa, meaning it's like above. So you see ad v'layad b'chlal, up until that you're counting up until the Isser, but not including the Isser. Because up until the Isser, it's kasha. The Isser itself is tamei. Ad v'layad b'chlal. You go up to the 50, right? You go up to the 50, but the 50, that's on the other side. The 50 is on the other side already. It's tamei. Good. Fred the Gemara for Rav Nachman from a few places. Each time he's able to go ahead and say, no, I'll view it as what as Lamaila, I'll view it as ad v'layad b'chlal. Each time, v'layad b'chlal. We finally come to a case where we have a case of a broken kli, and we're finding over there they said ad v'layad b'chlal. Now, if you say ad v'layad b'chlal, ad b'chlal, you're saying ad b'chlal that it's considered tamei, correct? So you say ad b'chlal. Says Rav Nachman, it's not true. Really, ad v'layad b'chlal. The reason we said ad b'chlal is we want to be metame it. And then we bring a raya. Between 0 and 5, it's tahar. Between 5 and 10, it's tamei. Above 10, it's tahar. Good. Now, so let's go with that. So, what about 5 itself? What about 10 itself? So, if 5 itself is tamei, you see, layad b'chlal, because you're going to go push it to the other side. If 10 is tamei, it means obviously you're not pushing it to the other side, you're going this way. So good. Look, nasim. This way you say ad v'layad b'chlal, 5. This way you're saying ad v'layad b'chlal. And that's the hezbollah using two sides of the fingers. Nittel at chol. Excuse me?
The 10 is ad b'chlal.
10 is b'chlal, right? The 10 is that's the raya of David, that b'chlal, right? Including ad b'chlal.
Yeah,
yes. No. It's still part ad b'chlal, right? Nittel at chol. The spleen. If you take the spleen out, right, it's going to be a kasha. If you take it out, if you put a hole in it, treifa, it's a treifa. Now it's a very interesting svara, right? You would think if you have a hole in it, right, it's worse than if you take it out. If you look at Rashi, guys, I was bothered by this. Look at Rashi from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines up. 5 lines up. The chamer nikiv v'nechtach minita legamri. Having a hole or a cut is more severe than taking that completely. Shayidei nekiv hu hoilich u'moisich machayv v'hachayli rav begufay. As a result of the hole, what it does is it creates pain, and it creates if you take it out, but it stays. I guess take out a gallbladder. People live, no problem, right? Keep that gallbladder in. I hold it. I heard it's terrible pain, terrible pain. Okay, anyway, so that's the svara. So says Rabbi Avira, that we said is nitel. Aval nikev, it's a treifa. Master Rav Yosef bar Rav and Vitem Rav Yosef bar Zvida. Okay, now guys, we're having the next parak is Behema Makasha. That if you go ahead and it deals with the concept of ben pekua. That if you go ahead and the shchita on an animal, whatever's inside the animal is okay. If you cut even an aver inside the animal and you get a shchita, it's not even minachai. If you cut, right. However, if you cut the spleen or the kidneys of the animal, then the kidneys are asar al sefer minachai. Good, says the Gemara. So amal nikev treifa. Master Rabbi Yosef bar Ovid. Vitem Rabbi Yosef bar Zvida. Chaytech me'uber b'shem meha. If you cut the uber that's inside the womb, muta b'achili. You can eat the uber. Minat chol minat kolayos. If you cut the spleen or you go ahead and cut the The kidneys, asa. That's asa. I'll say from in a chai. The shechita of the mother will not matter the tchul and not matter the koyas. However, so it's asa bachila. Ha behema gufa sharia, but the behema guys is mutta. 1 second. If you just told me making a hole in the spleen, in this case cutting the spleen, the animal wide is a treifa. How in the world could you eat this animal? Guys, you went ahead and you just told me the following. If you take out the spleen, you're good. If you make a hole in the spleen, it's bad. We just said if you go ahead, take a knife, it's in the womb of the mother. You go ahead and make a hole or cut the spleen, right? It's going to be asa, I'll say from menachai, but the animal will be mutta. Why is the baby mutta? The baby is a shreifa. You made a hole in the spleen. That's the kasha on Rabbi Vira. On that one, it says, "Who I did not feel behema nami asira." Behema also would be asa. I did Tani Reisha Mutta Bachila. Since we learned in the Reisha that it's Mutta Bachila, Tananami say for us Bachila. We use that same lashon. You say Nikev l'chud v'nechtach l'chud. You could say it's two different things. You could say Nikev is worse, and Nikev is worse than nechtach, and therefore it wouldn't be a treifa. However, if you make Nikev a hole, then it would be a treifa, but cutting would not be a treifa. Nitla kloyes, one of the sheris was if you take out the kidneys. You take out the kidneys. Says the Gemara. Amar Rachish bar Papa Mishmei Derav Loksa Bekulya Achas Treifa. Now, guys, if it's not in the first Mishnah and it's not in the second Mishnah, how can you say it's a Treifa? And the answer is it's one of the Shev Shmaitzes. This is one of the 7. This was the 7 that was not included. The 7 of the Amoroyim. So this is one of the Shev Shmaitzes. Amarachish Bapapa Mishmei Derab Laksa Bekulya Achas Treifa. If one of the kulyas was diseased, it's a treifa. Ami Marabe said in Eretz Yisrael, Vu de Mate Lekusa Lemokam Charitz. Okay, we have a picture over here. Take a look at page Shin Samachvav. Shin Samachvav. Below the chicken. Below the chicken. Yeah, Shin Samachvav. Chaim. In the Slicha school. No. He was harving to learn. He was looking up the Marsha. Anyway, okay, guys, see that? You see what that is showing you? It has to be the disease to that white area. That white area in the middle. It says there's a tzina of dam and there's a tzina of urine, right? In the kidney, the blood goes in, it's filtered, and it comes out as urine. So the white area in the middle, it looks like a little white area. In the middle, right? So that's where it has to be. L'makam chritz, behechim makam chritz, back in the Gemara, l'chiyura de tute masnei. It's the area that's below the loin. I think we have a picture over here, 377, right? That's the picture we're looking at. 377. Okay. Says the Gemara Vaita. Amram Nechunya, Shaltinu lekula trufoi de marava. I asked all the experts in Trefus in Eretz Yisrael. V'amrili hilchasa ke Rachish bar Papa. The halacha is like Rachish bar Papa regarding the kidney. If there's one kidney, so less hilchasa ke Rabbi Vira that if there's a hole in the spleen. So the halacha is like a hole in the kidney being diseased would be a treifa, but a hole in the spleen would not be a treifa. That's only the kulsha. The spleen has a thick part on the top and a thin part on the bottom. That if the holes in the kulyish in the thin part, it's not a treifa. But in the fatter part, it's a treifa. And there's a picture over here on page Shin Samet Zion, 378, the top picture in the middle there. Okay, so you have the thin part, the thick part, and the thin part. Okay, and if you look at page Shin Samet Ches, and the hole, it has to go through. If you have a space between the hole, it's the neck of usually is a hole. If you have a space that is wide enough to hold a dinar, then it's going to be kasha. Says the Gemara. The ishtarya bay, if it remains in the spleen, ke'oivei dinar. You see picture 380, guys. You see that space he's showing you. over there, that space, right? You have you have it in there, and you're showing that space. Aber besuche treif, wie stei bekomme, ist auch kosher. I'm my Rava, call up poisel bereya, kosher bekol. Anything that's going to not be good in the lung is going to be good in the kidney. Shai nekev psil bereya, because bekolya, because a hole in the reya is no good. In the kidney it is. The kosher and hechad the kosher bereya, kosher bekolya. And if it's something that's kosher in the lung, it's going to be kosher in the kidney. Maskal reptam chumya v'klalu, is that a good klal? Very mugla pus. The kosher bereya, it's kosher in the reya, upasul bekolya. You just want to tell me a rule that anything is kosher in the lung, it's going to be kosher in the kidney. Here I have something that's kosher in the lung and pasul the kidney, right? The mugla, if you have the pus. Mayim zachim the ksherim hacha v'hacha. You have mayim that is clear, that's kosher here and there. Look at Rashi, guys. First in line. Lo yadana my kusha. Says Rashi. I don't know what the kasha is. Anyway, Elo Omar Ravashi, Trefis Kamadamis Ladadi. You complaining? What are you asking? You're asking that pus in the ray is nothing, but pus in the kidney is something. What are you doing? You can't compare Trefis. You can't compare the kidney and the lung. We saw in the leg, guys. If you cut lower down in the leg, the animal dies. Higher in the leg, the animal lives. That makes no sense. But you see, you can't be medama one to the other. If it's clear, if it's cloudy, then treifa. And if it's clear, also it doesn't smell. Treifa, then it's treifa. A kulya that got small, it shriveled up. Bidaka at kipul, and the behemoth daka at kipul into the size of a bean. Begasa at keanova beinis, till a small size of a grape. Let's skip it. Nitala aim shala. We said if a female animal is missing its womb, it's kasha. Tana hiya aim hi tapachas hi shalfuchas. In our Masechta, we're going to see tapachas. We saw shalfuchas. It's all the aim. The different words for the womb. We said charusi b'dei shemayim kshera. We said if an animal's lungs shrivels up, it turns hard, and hard from fear, right? From fear, then it's kasha. Now, medayik, it says charusi b'dei shemayim is kshera. Mashma b'dei adam, it's not. So Rashi says ivisa adam lo yihadra beria. It doesn't get better. If it's scared by a person, it doesn't get better. If it's a natural, they hear thunder and lightning and they get scared, then they can be cured. But if a person says boo, they don't get cured. It doesn't. It's good. Pana Rabbanan. Eza charusa. What is the charusa? Kol shetzamka reya shalah. It becomes shriveled up. Bidei shemayim ksheri, bidei adam treifa. Rav Shimon Elazar Omer. Af bidei kol. Change the gersa. Af bidei kol abrius. Even if it's a sound of a beria of any creation. Now, here's what's pshat. Is this a chumrah? Is that going to be shemayim, or is a chumrah bidei adam or a kula bidei shemayim? So in other words, let's say here's a lion roar, and it shrivels up. Is that going to be considered a treif or not? Right. That's the question. Iboyalahu Rav Shimon ben Elazar a reisha koi. Is he going on the reisha and it's what ulakula, and therefore it's considered like bidei shemayim and it'll be kshera? Ayasefa koi. It's going on bidei adam ulachumra and it will be a treifa. Tashma de Tanya, Charusa b'dei adam treifa. Charusa b'dei adam is a treifa. Reb Shimon Elazar af b'dei koil habrios also. So obviously he's being machmir, and not only scared by me, but scared by any creature in this world. He'll be a treifa. Rabbi Rav Chana havi koazol mimidbara ashkahu dichri. He found these rams that samik reya didu, that their reyas, that their lungs were shriveled up. Asa shave midrasha amrulay. They said bekaita, if it's the summer. I see mishichle chivra, bring a white basin, umalina mayim kriri, and bring cold water, v'anchinu, and go ahead and leave the lungs in it, me'es la'es, yihodrim beria, if they return to their state of health, b'dei shemayim hi and v'kshera. So in other words, you want a betika now, you do a shchita, you find shriveled up lungs, and you want to know, is it b'dei odam and it's a treif, or it's b'dei shemayim and it's kshera. So if it's in the summer, take a white basin of cold water, put it in there for 24 hours. Right, and sisva, if it's in the winter, I see mashkili shechume. Bring the Rashi has two pshat. This is a black kli or klicheres umalinu maya pshuri, and go put in lukewarm water. If it gets better, it's kosher. If you like treifa, so that's the praba. That's the test of telling. Hagluda, we said the gluda is what? If the animal is skinned, is kshera. When Meir said it's kosher, the Chum said it's puzzle. So your machloikis, the last gluda, what's the din of a gluda, right? So what's the din of a gluda? Says the Chachamim, it's puzzle, and the Meir says what it is kosher. Okay, says the Gemara. Tan Rabbanan, Hagluda Remeya Machshiv Chachamim Placeland. Ukvar Heyed Elazar Safra the Yochanan and Good Gada, ala Gluda Shepsula. Amrav Shimon, like the Chachamim. Amrav Shimon Elazar Chaza by Reb Meir. Now Meir, he's changing his mind. Nechal the Reb Shimon ben Elazar Palik. Reb Meir begluda, right? It's mashma when you said that he had charata. It must be that what that he he changed his mind. I have a Tanya that because he argued. I have a Tanya. Amr Shimon Elazar like nechlu Reb Meir v'chacham ma'gluda shepsula. There's no machlokes. In other words, you said he changed his mind, and it's mashma went from kosher to puzzle, right? And now Rabbi Shimon Elazar is saying that what? In fact, no. Rabbi Shimon Elazar is saying, in fact, that what? That the gluda was there's no argument that Rabbi said it's puzzle. So why do you say it's kosher? Why do you say it's kosher? He was a seller, a merchant of spices. Lefnei Rabbi Akiva, Mishum Reb Tarfin ala gluda shepsula. Then the shtayir ba kesela kshera. If you have the skin the size of a cell, it's kosher. Rav Nachman Yitzchak, my loy nechlu. What does it mean loy nechlu? Like Reb Meir mechlu kosei. Doesn't mean, fellas, that he doesn't argue. Meaning he takat charata. He didn't stand in the machlokes, guys. Like nechlu means he never. It's not pshat. He didn't argue from the beginning. Like nechlu that he didn't stand in the machlokes, but in the chinam he had charata. Okay. Amamar in the shtayir ba kesela kshera. We said that what if you have skin the size of a sella, it's kosher. Heicha, where exactly is the skin? Amrav Yudah Mishmuel al pnei shidra kula. It's across the whole shidra. It goes, what? Shin Ayin Gimel. Okay, Shin Ayin Gimel, picture 389. Oh, the top picture is it's glued completely, right? That has no skin. In the bottom picture, look at the spinal column, guys. You see so it's the width of a cella. It's not a cella of hair. It's the width of a cella going down the length of what? Of the spinal column. You see that? You can fill it in. He put going down the length of the spinal column. So I'll put the kula ibailu the arich v'cotton the hakim tzarflei havi kasela idilma beroich of sela. Or maybe ask the Reich Sela al Pnei Ashir Kula. So the Tashma, the Parish Reb Neroi Mishmei de Shmuel, Beroich of Kesela al Pnei Kol Ashir. It has to be the length of a cell, the width of a cell going down. Rabbi Bechano Amar Roishe Prokim, it has to be on the head. Guys, take a look on page Shin Ayin Daled, bottom picture. You see? It's on each vertebrae, guys. It's on each vertebrae. You know that. So this has to be Rosh Prokim. Rebbe Elazar ben Antignus Mishum Rebbe Elazar Reb Yanai Omar Mokum Tiburoi. Place Mokum Tiburoi Shinai and Hey, guys. That even if it has the hair on Mokum Tiburoi on its navel, it will be kshera according to everybody. Boy Reb Yanai, Reb Yishmael Nitel Mokum Hashidra. Guys, let's say the opposite. Let's say the whole animal has hair, except what? Except the area going down the back. Okay, page Shinai and Vav. In other words, now the whole animal has, well, you're just missing those pieces. In other words, you told me those pieces when they're filled in, it's kshera. Yeah? So what happens if those pieces are not filled in? They're missing that, but the rest of the animal has that. So he wants to know. Says the Gemara Teku. Amar Rav. Kola or kula matzel begluda. Any type of skin can say begluda. Chutz mi or beis haprosais. With the exception of the what? The or beis haprosais shinai and zayin. Okay. So Rav says that it's going to be The base of process will not be the base, right? That will not regenerate. Rabbi Yochanan mafilu or base of process nami matzel. So in other words, it's considered skin. It's considered skin. So we have machlokas. Rav says no. Rabbi Yochanan says yes. Asim Rabbi Yochanan or base of process mahu. Will it save it from being a gluda? Ma'ushe yatzel begluda. Amalei matzel. It saves it. Amalei l'marateinu rabbeinu. Elu she'oroseyam kibisaron. These are the ones that the or is like the basa. We're going to see this Bez Hashem. We're going to do a parak later on. Right? We're going to see a parak later on. Or varoitiv Bez Hashem. Right? Huh?
Nice easy parak.
Yeah, easy parak. Right. Now the question is linyan tuma. Does the or metama like the basa? So if it's basar, it is. If it's or, it's not. The elushar is saying kibasar meaning the metame. Or base haprasais. So you see what? It's basar. Guys, when you tell me the or of the base haprasais is tame, see it's basar, not or. And you, Rabbi Yochanan, want to say it is or. So that Gemara says, Amalei, says Rabbi Yochanan to Rav Asi, Al takmiteni, don't go ahead and bother me. Shabaloshin Yochanan Yishainasa. That the or base haprasais is what is considered in Tumah, is considered basar, is a das yachid, and we don't hold like that. The Tanya, okay, guys, linyan pigel, right? What do we have to know? You have a shchita, one of the four, or shchita, and you have in mind avoid this on a davar that can be eaten by the mizbeach or by a person. Maybe it has to be something you could eat. Good. So here's the following: Hashoichet es oila lahakti kazayis meor shel tachas alya. You shech the oila to burn a kazayas from the or the skin that's underneath the tail. Put some malkim puzzle the aim by karis. Chutzman pigel v'chayv karis. So you see that this or is considered meat. When you chayv on the karis, it's considered meat. Elazar ben Yehuda ish ivlim omar mishum Reb Yaakov v'chein hoyer Reb Shimon ben Yehuda ish kfar. Change the gears to ish kfar omar mishum Reb Shimon echad or beis haprasais ve'echad or haroish shalegol harach. The echad or shel tachas alya, right? And all these would be considered what? They'd be considered basa. You'd be chayiv for pigel. So this is the das of this individual. It's not the das of the chachamim. It's the das of Elazar ben Yehuda, right? So it's more of a chol shemanu chachamim gavi tuma elisher was saying saron, right? Lehevi or beis habaishes. That's the or beis habaishes by a female animal. Chutzim koimi pasalim mekaris chutzim mana pigel v'chayim mekaris. So what do you see? That this beis process is considered basar according to this Tana. But I Rabbi, and this is a das yachid. But Racham say the only or that will be considered basar is that's tachas aliyah. Only the bar tachas aliyah would be considered basar, but the or on the base of process not. It won't be considered basar. It'd be considered or. Since it's considered or, it'll be mitzvah midei gluda, and therefore you don't have a problem.